So today we are going to learn about layouts in NativeScript. So I'll start with the docs page. So whenever you want to learn anything about NativeScript, the best place to learn it is in the docs or any NativeScript course videos that you're watching. So let's start up with docs here, and this video is about NativeScript core concepts. We won't be talking about NativeScript Angular or Vue. So here we are going into layouts today. So what exactly is layouts? Layouts is what widgets that you see on the screen and how they're laid out, right? So in that layout process, there are two steps. One is the measure pass, and then there's the layout pass. Measure pass is when each view is measured and its size is retrieved. So when you create, let's say, a label or some stack layout or switch, any view, that will need to have some width and height set by the phone so that it can draw it on the screen. So in the measure pass, that width, height, visibility, minimum height, and all these properties that I'm highlighting here, these properties get determined in the measure pass. And in the layout pass, these properties that were determined gets used. Each layout will have its own alignment as well, and margins and everything, paddings and so on. We'll talk about that in more detail. And the types of layouts that we are going to study today are Flexbox layout, absolute layout, dock layout, grid layout, stack layout, and wrap layout. So that's six. So six types of layouts are there, and let's continue with this now. We are going to create a blank project now. Creating a project in NativeScript is very simple. So I'll just go to my work folder and create a new folder for us. Call this NativeScript Ambassador. And so I'm opening my terminal there. So I'll create a project TNS, create, we'll call it layouts demo. Okay, so this is the first first command that you're learning from NativeScript CLI, that is TNS create. So that is used to create a new project. If you're creating an Angular project, you do something like TNS create project name, then dash dash ng or -ng. So that's creating the project, and it's installing the dependencies. So let's open the folder, demo, and we'll do code. So when you create a new project in NativeScript, it will by default use the template of hello world program. So that'll just have the thing that I'm going to show you now. I'm going to run it. Let's go ahead and run this. So to see which devices are connected to your computer, you can run TNS devices. So it's going to tell two devices are connected. Yeah, so you can see two devices are connected. Let's say you want to run only for one of the device, then you can do TNS run dash dash device, and then you can copy this device identifier and paste it here, and then it will run to only one of that device. But of course, if you just do TNS run, then it will run on both phones. And if you do TNS run Android, it will run on only Android phone. If you do TNS run iOS, it will run only on iOS. Okay, TNS run Android. Let's run it on Android. And for iOS, if you're not using the emulator, wait, I think we should just use the emulator. We'll disconnect this. We'll just use the emulator. If you're using a real device on iOS, you'll have to work with the provisioning profiles and all that. So we'll save that part for some other time. So you can see Android is building. So I'll add another terminal here, and I'll also build for iOS. So I think we'll wait till the Android one builds so that, yeah, well that's going on. Let's take a look at the project structure. So everything you write will be inside app folder. So what is inside platform folder is what you get after building the app. So when you finish building the app, you can find the APK file and all that inside this Android folder. So we'll not worry about these platforms or node modules. So inside app folder, we have app.js. So this is where the app gets bootstrapped. So you can see this application.run being executed here. So this is the first command that gets executed. And from here on, whatever you see will be the application. So whatever line you write after this line won't get executed. So in this app.js, if you want to execute some line, that has to be written before this application.run. Okay. So there will be some circumstances where you would want to add some code in app.js. Some plugins will require you to initialize something in the plugin, and they generally ask you to add their plugin code before this line in app.js. Okay, so that's app.js, and then there is app.css. This is where all the styles, global styles of your application lie. So any style you write here will get applied to all the XML pages in your application. If you want to apply a CSS to a particular XML file, let's say you want a CSS for just main page.xml, then you would want to add a main page.css. Then it will apply only to main page.xml. Let's see, back to terminal. It's still building it.
A few moments later.
It's almost done. This is only one-time process, guys. Like the first build takes this much time. Subsequent builds are like super fast. You won't be waiting this much. Okay, successfully installed, and it's gonna launch now. And there you have it. That's our Hello World application, which has some tabs left, and you can keep tapping. Tap, 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 tap. And yeah, NativeScript Quicker achievement unlocked. So we'll also start up iOS, and we won't wait for it to finish the build. We'll just get started on the layout things. So TNS run iOS. That should bring up my emulator and start there. So you can see this, tap the button, hooray, and that thing. So that can be found inside here now. Okay, so we'll not be creating many pages or anything. Let's tidy up this place. We are just going to focus on layouts. Okay, the first layout that I want to talk about is stack layout. So this is the most commonly used layout in NativeScript. Most people who come from web developer background generally like to think of stack layout as their div in NativeScript. But that's totally wrong. You should try to avoid doing that. Basic use of stack layout is to stack things up. That's all. So let's say I want to create a label. By the way, I have this snippet plugin, so I can just do this label, and yeah. So I can do this line 1, and then I'm gonna do from line 2 and 3. I'm not very creative with label text, so let's see how that looks. Yeah, we got iOS 2. Yes, so now we have both Android and iOS. You can see we are getting the same behavior on both phones. We have this is line 1, line 2, and line 3. And as you can see, these things are getting stacked on top of each other. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some CSS to this. So let's just use app CSS this time. So we'll just add a CSS of border to this label border width 1. Okay, now you can see that each of these labels have border. So why I'm adding border is because it's crucial to understand that when you add some widget, how much space it is actually taking up. Because if you don't have this border, what would you have thought is that the stack layout, this is line 1, so that is how much space this label is taking up. But now, as soon as I added border, you have a much better picture of how much space it is taking and why it is looking like that. So generally, UI related things, when you want to debug, I'm sure if you have been doing web development, you would have done this on web as well. The same applies to here in mobile as well, because mobile development experience for a NativeScript developer is pretty much web-like, because we have access to all the CSS here. So you saw that it looks like this. Now let's talk about some things about stack layout. By default, stack layout is oriented vertically. That means everything is placed one below the other. What if you want to stack it horizontally? Let's say you want it like this line 1, this line 2, this line 3, all in the same line. Then you can set the orientation property. Orientation horizontal, like that. So by default, orientation is set to vertical. You don't have to explicitly set that. So now you can see that the orientation changed to vertical. Now notice how the border looks like. And you can also notice that on iOS it is looking a little bit different. On Android it's looking a little bit different. The text on iOS is centered, but on Android it's not centered by default. So this is not because NativeScript is doing this. It's because NativeScript is simply using the native label and native linear layouts. And in Android, if you create native linear layout and use labels on it, by default, the label will be oriented like this, aligned like this to the top. And on iOS, by default, it will be aligned this way. So NativeScript is not doing any changes to that. But if we want it to be uniform, then we'll have to control it. Okay, so this is something to keep in mind. So that is two main orientations that you have. Orientation options are vertical and horizontal. Let's go back to being a vertical thing, and let's talk about centering that label. So I can do vertical, or just keep it here, vertical alignment center. So if I do vertical alignment center, you can see the whole thing is centered here, right? So this is how you'd want to center something in your layout. If I want to do horizontal alignment, so you can see it is horizontally centered now. And see how helpful it was for adding this border. Without the border, you'd think that this is still occupying the full width of the screen. But note that it's not occupying the full width of the screen. It's just taking as much space as it can. So these kind of behaviors that you need to understand properly. Okay, so I'm gonna do vertical alignment center now. So that should bring it completely to the center. Okay, now if you have vertical alignment and horizontal alignment set to center, then it is properly centered. So now let's think that this much is one widget inside our layout. So it has a parent stack layout. Let's say it has a parent stack layout like this. Now what is the behavior? Let's try to understand that. Okay, now I would want to add border to this place. So I'll create a class called border, and I'll I'll not put I'll not put borders on the label. I'll just put border wherever the border class is applied. Okay. Of course, I can start writing the CSS directly here itself. So I could just do border width 1. That will work. Any CSS that you write here, if it is separated by kebab case, which is by this hyphen, you can just remove that hyphen and make the next letter capital. Just use camel case, and that CSS can be directly written like this. You can either do that, or you can do like style is equal to border width 1. You could do that, or this works. So you have multiple options of styling it. We'll get to that in more detail later. So let's see how this looks. Okay, so this is how it is looking when a stack layout is inside a stack layout. But now I'll put border on the outer stack layout. So I'll put border on the parent stack layout now. What does it look like? You can see that there is no border on the outside or something. Okay, there is a border on the outside. I don't know if it's visible. Um, like I'm just trying to zoom in and show it to you guys. So you can see that there is a border on the outside. Is that a border on the outside? I'm not sure yet. Let's try to make the border width bigger. Border width uh, 4 maybe. Border color green. Put some padding. Let's put some margin. Put margin of 5. Yeah, there was border, so making it thicker worked. So you can see that the parent stack layout is taking up the whole space of the page, right? So now let's look at other interactions. Now this stack layout which is inside the other stack layout is not trying to expand through the entire page. That is what I wanted to try to show to you. So the parent stack layout, when you create a stack layout like this, that's the first child of the page, then it takes a full page. But if stack layout is inside some other layout, then it depends. Let's say if you put the stack layout inside a grid layout, you could make the stack layout expand as much as you want in that cell. But if you put it inside another stack layout, then it's only going to expand to how much its inner child elements want. For example, if this label, if it had a height of 150 or something, then you can see that stack layout is expanding to accommodate whatever child element was there. So it doesn't have a definite height. So, but if we had it set on a definite height, let's say this stack layout has a height of 100, but inside that there is an element which has a height of 150, and then there are some labels there. Then you cannot see the other items because it just overflowed out of the label, out of the stack layout, and so on. I don't know if this is getting complex, but okay, let's go back. Leave that and a visor add. Okay, so that we'll go back to the simple thing. Okay, not scary anymore. So what we are going to do next is we'll take the stack layout and we'll duplicate it. Let's say we have 3 of them. Okay, we have 3 of them now, but still you see that it's only taking up as much space as it wants. Now we'll apply something like horizontal alignment center. Let's see what happens. You can see that just that layout is getting affected. So this horizontal alignment and vertical alignment property exist on almost all the layouts, all the 6 layouts of NativeScript, I think, except Flexbox layout. But other layouts all have this horizontal alignment and vertical alignment property. So it's not like you can apply it to only the layout, you can also apply it to the elements. I applied it on the label, I guess, earlier, maybe, I don't know, I don't remember. If I applied it only on the item inside stack layout, then it would look like this. You can see that it's only applied on that label. You can also apply it on the outer layout itself, like this. And let's say this one has a vertical alignment center. Let's see what happens. See what happens. Nothing happens. Why does nothing happen? Because if you have something else already set to horizontal alignment center and there are other stack layout elements as well, then vertically aligning this middle item to a center would just mean that whatever space is available between these 2 items, in that space vertically center align it, which is already like, okay, so let me re-explain that. So you can see this first stack layout, right? There is this first stack layout and then there is second stack layout. Okay, so between this there is only this much space. There is only this much space for the stack layout. So if you're trying to vertically center it, then it's already vertically centered, so nothing happened. So that's what I'm trying to explain. So say if everything had vertical alignment center on it, what would that look like? So again, you see that there's nothing happening here, because vertical aligning center would work if there was one stack layout inside it like this, and that had a vertical alignment center. See if that works. What does that do? Still nothing. But do you remember when I had just one stack layout in the page? When I did a vertical alignment center, it was able to center the page. Do you remember that? So why this is not getting centered? So this is one common problem which people might face. Okay. So let's say now what to do. Say height is 100%. And then here I put a vertical alignment center. Are you going to center it? No. So even now this doesn't center. So according to me, like these are some of the problems that I face when using stack layout. So these are the places where I prefer to switch to Flexbox layout. So but now you're aware of these behaviors. So you saw when the vertical alignment center worked as we expected, but when it did not. So even if I set this height to 100%, I was not able to vertically center the stack layout. So these are some of the things that I have noticed. Now let's go back to being this. So it's all fine. Okay. So this was some things about stack layout, and then let's say visibility. Okay, visibility. This is for binding. Let's not use this now. Collapse. So there's a property called visibility. If you set it to collapse, then you can see only one of it is visible. To make it less ambiguous, I'll just make it 4, 5, 6. Okay, so this is 1, 2, 3, and this is 4, 5, 6, and you can see only 4, 5, 6 is visible now. Now that happened when I set the visibility to collapse. But what if I want that 1, 2, 3 to also take up space while being invisible? Then there's one more property called hidden. So not property, I mean the value of visibility. So you can set it to hidden. If you set visibility to hidden, then you can see that it did not collapse there. It is still present there taking up that space, but whatever is inside that layout is hidden. Okay, so the third value is visible, which is the default value. So visibility can either be visible, collapse, or hidden. Okay, those are the three properties for that. And then um, every layout has a is collapse property, which you can use in the code, like when you're writing it in the JS file, to check if the layout is currently collapsed or not. And then you could directly set all these things like background color, red, something like that. All this is just like your CSS. You can write it in here saying background color and so on, or you can directly apply it from here as a camel case thing. So if I had set it to red, then it would look a red box there. And if I want to change the color to white, that would be color to white. So like that, and I can go on and on about it. But if you want to find out all the different CSS classes, CSS properties that are supported, you can just search NativeScript CSS and styling. So when you go to docs, NativeScript.ui.styling, then you can find out all the different supported CSS things in NativeScript. Here it is. So you have supported CSS properties. These are some of the common CSS properties that are available. There are some more like CSS properties that you might be knowing, like drop shadow, making drop shadow kind of things and all that. Those are not available in NativeScript because those are not natively available on Android and iOS. But this text align, text decoration, all these things are available. Width, height, padding, and padding just works the same way that works on the web. So let's give some padding here. Let's do padding 20. Okay, let's see how that looks. So had I said something? Oh, background color. Background color blue, maybe, I don't know. Set it to blue. So that's what padding 20 looks like. But if I just wanted the padding on top and bottom, then I would do 20 0. So you can see now the padding applied only on top and bottom. So the convention is if you give only one number here to padding, then it applies to all four sides. If you give two numbers, then it means first one applies to top and bottom, second one applies to left and right. Then the third way is to give all four numbers. So that's like first one is top, then right, then bottom, then left. So top, right is also 0. I'll give 20 on the left. So this should look like this. So 20 on the left, 20 on the top, but right and bottom is 0. So that is top, right, bottom, left. That is same as the web. Of course, if you don't like to do this, you can individually set like this. Padding right is equal to 20, or you could set it in the CSS also. Of course, you can do padding hyphen right is equal to 20 colon 20. You can do that way. And the same applies for margin. Margin also works the same way like padding, but the behavior of margin is different, of course. So you can see when I did padding to this, it brought the text inside it a little more inwards and gave some space between the border and the text itself. But if I try to do margin, if I do a margin 20, then the story is different. Now you can see the margin applied. Of course, this might sound noobish to you because you already know this as a web developer. And the same concept applies on mobile as well, okay? Same thing that you learned about margin and padding, the same thing applies here. So that's about background color and margin and color and all this. So that was something about stack layout. Do you have any questions about stack layout? It's similar to WPF styling, yes. That's also that, yeah. And nesting of stack layout like this can of course affect the performance. This is not recommended. Uh, don't set up your layouts like this. This is something I wanted to show the behavior of stack layout. That's why I've nested it this way, but don't nest it in your program like this. We'll get into better layouts soon. This was just one of the layout, that is stack layout. Now you know when stack layout can be used when you want to stack multiple items, and can be used to stack vertically or horizontally. And you can see that things can be horizontally aligned, uh, vertically aligned, and all that. So let's get to the next layout. We'll get to absolute layout next. So I have the snippets here for that, and it's absolute. So absolute layout. Absolute layout works exactly like the way you think it would work in web. So you just have to specify top and right value starting from this top right. Okay, so top left part of the app, starting from that point, how much distance from the top and how much distance to the right it should be. So let's say I'll put it top 10 and right 10, and I'll not specify bottom and right. Not right, sorry, it should be left, right, should be left, top and left. So you can see that this label is 10 down from the top and 10 to the left. to the left side of this there's 10 space, and to the top of it there's 10 space. So let's put, let's say 50. That was too less. And we'll also put our class of border here to see the behavior of label inside absolute layout. Okay, this is how it looks. Now note that when we created the stack layout as a parent element, I mean sorry, as the root element of the page, and when we created a label inside it, do you remember that the label was taking up full space, which was available on the screen? But when I make an absolute layout and put the same label in there, it doesn't take up full space. You might be wondering why. Yeah, it's not taking that space because in absolute layout, the screen width and screen height doesn't come into picture. You have to absolutely specify how much is the width, how much is the height, and everything. And if you don't specify the width, it is only going to take up as much space as it requires. So same thing, like if you try to make a grid layout inside absolute layout, then if you put the star property on the grid layout, star means take up as much space as available, then grid layout won't know how much space should I take. So it usually goes outside of the screen. So you have to properly give the space in an absolute layout. So the name itself tells you absolute. So you have to absolutely specify everything on your own. So there are usages for absolute layout, but whenever you can avoid an absolute layout, it is best to avoid it, according to me, because most of your requirements will be met with the other layouts. But this is what absolute layout can do for you. Let's say I add one more item to this layout. Let's see what it can do. What do you think? Does it stack the layout just like stack layout, or what is it going to do? Nothing happened. Why? Let me try changing this to number 2. Oh, see that overlaps, right? So, like I said, you have to absolutely specify where it has to be. So, in this, the top and left is again set to the same thing. So, that doesn't mean that take this label and from there you go top this much and left this much. It doesn't mean that. It still takes the same reference, the top left part. So, if I said something like top 100, then I can see both label 1 and label 2. So layouts can overlap, one thing can come on top of the other, and we'll also put color on this, background color. I'll put red on this, and maybe some blue on that. Okay, I don't use anything other than the primary colors. So we'll put 60 here. So the next thing that I wanted to show you is whenever a layout is letting you to overlap, whichever item that you place at the bottom is going to come at the top. Okay, that is how layering works in NativeScript. So I wrote the second label at the bottom, and that is the one that is appearing at the top. So this concept is crucial to understand. For example, there might be a spinner in your UI, which you always want to appear at the top. So you should likely place that spinner or activity indicator at the bottom of the layer so that it appears on the top. Whenever you're layering items in NativeScript, make sure that you know which order you want it to be in. Okay, so that's about layering in absolute layout and all that. Horizontal align center, let's see what that does here. So top and left was set, and this was how label 1 was looking like. And if I set horizontal alignment center, according to me it should just do nothing because we have already said that it should be this much from the top and this much from the left, so it is not going to affect it. But if I had not said how much it should be from the left, then what would horizontal alignment do? Still nothing. So horizontal alignment and vertical alignment don't work on items inside an absolute layout, but if absolute layout was inside some other layout, then absolute layout itself can have a horizontal alignment or a vertical alignment. That works, okay? So, but if you have an item inside absolute layout, then setting horizontal alignment to that doesn't do anything. Okay, so that was absolute layout. So next we'll get into dock layout. I'm saving the best for the last. So that would be Flexbox layout and grid layout. So we finished stack layout and then absolute layout. Now we are going to dock layout. Dock layout. Dock layout is one of the very interesting layouts in NativeScript. So let's. I'm going to use stack layouts as sort of filler things. So don't use this to make your layouts. Don't nest stack layouts like this. Always considered bad. Okay, so that's all I did. Let's see how that looks like. So I created a dock layout as the parent item, and then I just put a stack layout inside it, and I set a definite height to it. Okay, predefined height, and you can see it just appears in the center on both, even if I didn't do anything. So that is the default behavior of a dock layout. If you don't tell dock layout where you should place this item, so in dock layout you have to tell where you want to dock that item. We'll go to dock layout, which is the third one. We'll copy one snippet from there. Copy this snippet because it has some things set up for us. Yeah, that'll save everybody's time. So, so this is a sample code that I took from the documentation, and they have given a predefined height and width to the dock layout, and I'm going to remove that. So this is how dock layout looks like. So as the name tells you, dock layout, it is going to let you dock items to different sites. So here you can see left, top, right, bottom. So bottom item is placed at the last one. So it is taking only this much space. Let us move that one to the top or something and see if the way the layout looks changes in any way. You can see the way the layout looks changes. When the bottom item was placed at the last, it only was able to take whatever space was available. Understood? That is something interesting, right? So the place where you place this widget matters in NativeScript. So be careful with that. So when the okay, we'll just comment this one out. So top, left, and right items are there, okay, and they have taken up that much space. Now, what space is available at the bottom to dock? Only the middle part of it, right? So that's why when the bottom thing was placed here at the last, it was only able to take up that much space, right? So let me also put a border on it. You can see that it is not even spanning behind it or something. It's not going behind it. It's taking up only the space that is available. So if you want something to take up all the available space in dock layout, it's a little bit opposite to layering. In layering, whatever things you wanted to come at the top, you would have wanted to place it at the bottom of the layout. But in dock layout, when you're docking something, it matters. If that space is not available, then NativeScript is not going to give you that space. Okay, so now see that space is available for this item, completely available. Same goes for the top. Now top is only docking to, it's starting to dock only from that place which left thing is allowing. So if I'm going to move that to the top here, then that problem is also solved. Now that is taking up properly, right? So these are some of the interesting things. So normally people just take out the dock layout from the documentation and then, oh, okay, so this is how dock layout looks like, and then they leave it. But see what happens when you rearrange these things. Now there's one more interesting property of dock layout, that is stretch last child property, okay, that is currently set to false. But if we are going to add one more item here, let's say that is going to be a stack layout and it's going to have background color orange, maybe. We're getting creative with colors. And stretch last child is set to false. Let's see what's happening. It has refreshed, but I'm not able to see anything. But let me just put stack layout some height. HGHD height. And I'll give it some height of 10. Okay. So let's see what happens. Where is it? I can't see it yet. Let's give it some width. Say maybe 100. Where is it? It's right there. So I can see it now. But you can see that this last item that I added, it's neither at the top nor at the bottom, but it's at the center. Now try to remember something that I showed you first. I showed you a stack layout inside the dock layout, and where did it come? It came in the center of the page, right? So now that is the place where this newly added stack layout is coming. But what if I wanted this orange thing to fill the entire available space? Now that is when stretch last child is set to true. That just means that whatever item you place at the last in this layout, make that item take over all the remaining space. So that you have to not give the height and width. Sorry. Okay, now I'm gonna give that height and width. So now you can see that it is taking up that entire available space. So that is what stretch last child does. So dock layout is particularly useful when you want some widget in your app to be docked at one side, maybe like you having a bottom bar or you have something which always should stay at one side. So dock layout is particularly useful there. So you saw what stretch last child did to that, right? So let's say if this bottom part was not there, now you can see that it stretches to the bottom as well. So if none of these items were there, it still makes the orange thing as the last child of the stack layout. Now you saw the difference, right? When I simply placed the stack layout and gave it some height, it placed that stack layout at the center of the page. But if I make it stretch last child to true and then just not give any height to it, then it simply takes up the whole space. Okay, so that's some interesting things about dock layout. So I hope that makes dock layout pretty familiar to you. So inside that you can see some text. If you have top, left, right, bottom, those are just labels, right? So that label can be aligned in its own again. Like NativeScript allows you to add some classes like text center. So with that, you can see this top will come at the center. So that was dock layout. I hope you found it interesting. Let's go to wrap layout. Wrap layout. So before I go to wrap layout, okay, we'll do that with wrap layout only. I'll create a uh, I'll create a label or something here. Label with some text saying, I don't know, Apple. And this is something which you can do in NativeScript Core, but you cannot do it in NativeScript Angular, or you can do it in Vue, I guess, but not in Angular. You cannot create a self-closing tag like this on labels. You have to close it properly like this. But you can do this on NativeScript Core. You can create self-closing, which I usually like doing, and then let's create orange, mango, and don't know, cherry. Okay, let's give it a background color, and I'm gonna give red, blue, green. Um, cherry was supposed to be red. I don't know, maybe orange again. Okay, so we'll also give all of this a width of 10, okay, 50, height of 50. Okay, that should just look like a box of things. Oh, it will give some error because of what? Background, because of the spelling. There, got it. Yeah, I think that's what it's saying. Close tag name. Okay, I didn't close the wrap layout. That gave the error. So NativeScript debug screens are also pretty helpful. You can see that it clearly tells you what the problem is. So you can see that by default, wrap layout is wrapping items horizontally, not vertically. So wrap layout also goes ahead and stacks items for you, but I'm gonna make it 100 maybe. Okay, 100. So wrap layout stacks it horizontally for you. Okay, it doesn't stack it vertically by default. But if you want to stack it vertically, you can always go ahead and set the orientation vertical. That's available on wrap layout. Then it's going to stack it vertically like this for you. So what wrap layout does is, if there are more items, then it will start filling the other space. So if we had more fruits today, something like this, let's see what happens. So you can see that when it starts to overflow the screen, it starts the next column. But if I had it back to horizontal, you can see that it stacks horizontally now. So yeah, Android looks so cool because it was able to fit 4 things, but iOS screen is smaller. So now I'm going to change this wrap layout back to stack layout and see how that would have looked. You can see that after the fourth item, the fifth item is going outside of the screen. It's not even able to show it. So if you still want to show something that goes outside the screen, you won't get any scrolling on it, by the way. So you can see that there's this stack layout and there are more items than what can fit on the screen, but I cannot scroll it. Even if it was vertical, then I have this stack layout. I cannot see other items. But you saw what wrap layout did. It was able to wrap items to the next column when there was no space available on the screen. So if you were in stack layout and you want to still show it, then you could go ahead and create a scroll bar around it like this. Scroll layout, then scroll layout, and then with this. Now you should be able to scroll view with this. Sorry, not layout. Scroll view. Scroll view, not layout. It's not a layout. iOS is smart sometimes, it doesn't show all those things. Okay, so you can see that I'm able to scroll it when I have a scroll layout around it. Same goes for scrolling horizontally. If this thing was horizontal, so I think we just got sidetracked. We were in wrap layout. Happens all the time. So you can see I have stack layout orientation set to horizontal and the scroll view orientation also set to horizontal. Now I can scroll horizontally like this. Okay, so we'll undo all that and go back to wrap layout because that's what we were talking about. Wrap layout. Okay, we'll go back to these 4 items, and you pretty much know the purpose of wrap layout now. It just keeps trying to put as many items as it can in one line. If it doesn't have enough space, it starts the next line. Now there is Flexbox Layout also in NativeScript, and in that you can set flex wrap to no wrap or wrap and all that, just like you would do in CSS, and that works too. So most people will just go ahead and use that instead of wrap layout. But wrap layout also has its own uses, and if we get to the point of talking about repeater, we'll talk about that. There is something called repeater that we'll talk about later. So we'll leave wrap layout there. Bye bye to wrap layout, and we'll go to the next. Flexbox layout is one of the best layouts available in NativeScript, I must say, next to grid layout, of course. It has a lot of options for you. So we have this Flexbox layout now. Again, the thing with this documentation examples are that they have given the predefined height and width to it. I'm going to remove that. So yeah, it has a background color of light gray. I don't want that. So you can see some labels inside a Flexbox layout, and then they are placed like a row here. Okay, so there are just 4 labels here. They have some width and height, and you can see height is set to 70. Okay, width and height both are set to 70, but if you actually see the height of it, it is simply taking up all the available space. It is not obeying the height. So that is one interesting quirk about Flexbox layout. Flexbox layout can morph and stretch your items. So sometimes if items inside your layout is not behaving the way you want, it could be likely because it's inside a Flexbox layout. Um, if you have it set to align self center, maybe it's gonna obey it. Yeah, if you set it to align self center, then you can see that the height 70 is being obeyed. But if you don't set this align self to center, then Flexbox layout is going to stretch out all the item to how much ever space is available. And all the things that you have learned in web development, just like flex grow one and all that things that apply here. Okay, so by default, the flex direction is row. Okay, so now you can see 4 items here. By default, it is behaving like a row. Let's change that and put flex direction column. See what happens. Now it behaves like a column. So one thing that always confuses people is that if they are trying to make columns of items, they have to use row, flex direction as row. And if they are trying to make rows of item, then they have to use flex direction column. So what I like to think is when you say flex direction row, then the items are placed in a row. When you say flex direction is column, then the items are placed in one column itself, in the same column. That's what I like to think of. So that keeps me from being confused about it. So and then here also the same thing. You can see that width and height are set to 70, but the width is not being obeyed. So if I set align self center, now you can see the width is being obeyed. So again, if I don't set the width, what should happen? It is just going to take up as much space as it requires. Now the label one requires only that much space, and we have not set any padding on it or any margin on it, so it's only going to take up that much space if we set align self as center. So let's go back to setting width as 70, and we'll remove this align self center. So we'll go back to this. So that's how it looks. Cool, right? Mhm. Okay, then we have justify content. Okay, justify content. This is something that people commonly use. Justify content center. What happens? Everything is centered now. Flexbox layout is the best for centering items and doing all this kind of things. And then you also have space between. This is sort of when you want to stretch items. Say it is nicely stretched, right? So when you say space between, then the first and the last item will take up the far extreme and the far beginning, like start part of the layout and the end part of the layout, or the first and last item. And the center items will just take up equal space. Okay, there will be space between them, but not space around them. So that's why there's one more property called space around. So names are pretty self-descriptive here. this is space around, then you can see that always there is some space around it, and this space around or space between is not being obeyed on the right and left side of it. You can only see it's only being obeyed on the top and bottom side. That is because of the flex direction. If this flex direction was row, then it stretches like this. So you can see it's space around. Now, when you say space around, that space is now being put on the left and right side of the item. So everything depends on what direction you are in and what you have set here. Okay, it's justify content and all that. Just set it back to space between. Okay, that looks nice. Mm, align items center. What does that do? Now this is a shortcut for what I showed you. Like I wanted to do align self center, right? I showed you this earlier, but some of you might have wondered why would I want to set align self to center on every single item inside my Flexbox layout. So you can simply set align item center on the Flexbox layout, and then it applies to all the items inside the Flexbox layout. Got it? Okay, and then if you want to find out what each of it does, you have everything in the docs. Flex direction, there is column reverse and all these other ones available, and flex wrap. I told you, right, Flexbox layout can also do wrapping stuff. So you can set flex wrap to wrap, and then it does the wrapping. And yeah, you can read everything in the document. So I stress on you that after this talk, after you hear all this, go to NativeScript docs and open all these layout pages and see what are the different properties available and what each of that does. I can go all day explaining and experimenting this with you guys, but when you experiment on it on your own, you'll understand it way better. So what does flex grow do? Flex grow is going to say that just make that item bigger of all the available ones. Flex grow one. Okay, I'm going to not set anything here. See what happens. You can see that I put flex grow 1 on the last item, okay, and I did not set any width and height to it, and all these items have width and height set to it, 70 and 70 and everything, but this last item, let's also put height is 70, but the width is not set. When you do a flex grow 1, that means take all the available space. After you give some space to the other remaining ones, give all the available space to this item. So that is what flex grow means. So the same way there are other ones like flex wrap before, flex shrink, order, so many things that you can try. I recommend you guys to try these things on your own. So we'll go to the last layout available, that's grid layout. So let's save that and just see what it looks like. Again, the same thing. I'm gonna remove this width and height which is set here. I just want it to take up all the available space, and I don't want any background color. Just like this. See, on Android and iOS, it's just looking the same except for some label discrepancies, of course, but pretty much the same. One nice tidbit I want to give you about labels is that some labels, if they don't have enough space to display what the text is, then it goes like this, dot dot dot. You can see that, right? So that is label number 3. So when that happens, you can just say text wrap. That is true, and it's just going to somehow fit in all the things there. You can see that now label 3 is visible there properly, right? So that is what text wrap does. So it's generally a good idea to just set text wrap true to any text which you think is going to be long and won't fit in somebody's screen. So best to set text wrap to true. So let's get into grid layout now. You saw how messy stack layout could get pretty quick, right? When you wanted to make some kind of layout, you had to nest stack layout inside stack layout, and you saw Jen Looper also say don't nest stack layout. That's because the more layouts you create, the less performance you'll get out of your layouts, because NativeScript has to go through the measure pass and layout pass for every single layout. Doesn't apply to labels. You can stuff any number of labels in there, but the more layouts you add, that many measure pass and layout pass happens every time the screen has to update. So best to use grid layout so that your layout is pretty flat. You can see there's just one layout, and inside there's this just bunch of labels, and that layout looks like this. So just by being able to say what goes into what column and how many columns and how many rows are there, you're able to make whatever layout that you want to make. So that is the power that grid layout gives you. It's also available on the web, of course. So you can see that we have two properties here, rows and columns. And what do the rows say? It says 50, auto, and start. Okay, 50 means take the first column and give it a height of 50, sorry, a width of 50, and then second column should just take up as much space as the item in it needs, and the third column should take up all the available space. Okay, so the first column you can see is taking up 50 space. Second column doesn't have any item in the first row. In the second row, second column has label 4 and it's taking up just as much space as it requires. It's not having any padding, it's taking only that much space. And label 5 is expanding to how much ever space is available. Same goes in the row, 50, auto, and star, and you can relate to that as soon as you see this. So we'll take these things off and we'll just experiment with auto, auto. All of these are auto. Just take up as much space available. Label, I'll just put a class of text center to every label, and I'll just have 9 numbers here. Of course, not being any creative now, just making like a Rubik's cube kind of thing. I don't know. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. One shot. That's 9. Okay, now I did not set row, column, anything. I just have this many 9 labels inside it, and we'll put it like background color, red. And need 9 colors now. So I have these 9 items inside my grid layout. So where are they now? They are all placed only on the first item, first space, and it's taking up auto space. Okay, just taking auto. So I'll give some padding to all of it, maybe. Give it a padding of 10. Okay, it's just right there. Okay, everything just layered one on top of the other. I'll not put rows. What happens? Still everything laid on one on top of other. But you can see that the row expanded all the available space because there's only one row now. I have not set any rows, but previously when I set rows to auto, all this item by default got placed in the first row and first column. So the row just expanded to the fullest available space. Now even if I remove this column, you can see the same thing happens, but see, there is only one column now, so it took up all the available space. And you're only able to see 9 because 9 is the last item, and grid layout is just going to layer items. Now, I'm not going to give any rows and columns. Now, what do you expect? Now it just takes up full space. So pretty much expected thing, right? So let's go back. Now we have auto, and all these things. Now we'll put row and column to it. I nicely placed all these items inside the grid layout now. Looks kind of cute, right? And why does it take up only that much space? It's because I've set it to auto, right? But what if I had set it to start or nothing, nothingness, just like this? What that have look like? If you don't give a row and column definition, then it's not going to take it. Simple as that, okay? So you need to set it. So I'm gonna set star, star, star. Now you can see that it is nicely placed all over the place, right? So it's a nice grid. But let's say I want number 4 to, okay, number 5 to span over number 4. I want the number 5 to span over number 4. So what would that look like? Number 5, no, I want number 4 to span over number 5. So that would be like, where is number 4? Yeah, number 4 is here. I want it to span over number 5. So intuitively that would just mean row span is 2, because I want number 4 to be here, and in the row wise I want it to span 2 cells. So row span would be 2, right? So what happens though? I set it to row span 2, sorry, column span, I'm sorry. Yeah, intuitively it should say column span, because column wise, I'm spanning column wise, so it should say column wise. So, but if you see that now, that span behind it, so this again applies to the same layering concept. So since 4 is coming before number 5, it won't go above it. So I'm interchanging the lines. So when I interchange the lines, now you can see that 4 is spanning across 2 lines and 5 is behind 4. Okay. And if I give some margin to it, 20. Can you see that? 5 is behind number 4, right? So that will still be there, but because 4, we place the number line number of 4 after line number of 5 and set it to a call span of 2, you can see that it's coming at the top. So all this layering concept applies in almost all the layouts that you know in NativeScript. So don't forget that concept. You can see pretty quickly how grid layout was able to solve the problem of making complex layout uh, just so easy by telling what how much should be. Now there are other things about this star. This star always means take the maximum available space. Okay, so now we have 3 star. That means if there are 3 columns, then each column is getting available space, right? So what if I want this to just take 1 by 3 star, 1 by 3 star, 1 by 3 star? What does that do? So this works like we expected. So I'm saying take the screen width and cut it into 3 parts. And that give 1 part to the first column, 1 part to the second column, 1 part to the third column. You saw that fractioning also doesn't go well with auto. If you use auto and then use fractioning, that doesn't go well. But if you use fractioning all over the place like this, then it works properly. So it's working fine. So I want first column to use half of the screen and another half of the screen for the other 2 columns. Now you can see that the first column will span exactly half of the place. This is an important point. Whenever you're using fractions in grid layout like this, make sure like all the columns are defined in a fractional way. So I see this mistake some people make. So that is one thing, okay? And then if you use any star, then you cannot use fraction for other part of it. So, and then you know about all the row spanning and column spanning. That reminds me of one more thing. Each layout also has this opacity property, and with that you can control some cool things. So you remember I did this one, number 4, line number 4. I just brought it down 1, and then I had set call span to 2, and then I gave it some margin of some 20, and you saw the way it looked like that. But if you still want phi to be visible a little bit, then you can set some opacity on this. Opacity equal to 0.2. Is it even a thing? Building UI opacity should only be from 1 to, yeah, maximum value for opacity is 1. So yeah, 0 to 1 here. Yeah, 0 to 1. So I have set it to 0.2. Now, yeah, another thing that reminds me, background color. There are different ways of setting background color. You can set the color this way, or you can give it a hex code. Let's say E4, 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 ah, E4. That's gonna be a color. Oh, you know what? It turned out to be yellow. 333. Oh wait, I think I have. Yeah, that would never have worked because background color yellow has to be removed first. Yeah, I was like, how is E4 yellow? It's not supposed to be. I was thinking some gray. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, now you can see that you could use the hash one. You can use RGB like this. You can use like 255 0 and 0. That should be red. And then you can also use RGBA, then pass the last item, which is the opacity. Now you don't have to say opacity explicitly now. You can use RGBA. Okay. Then you can also use hue saturation something HSA also. That also works. So those are the different way you can specify the color. What else? I think those are some of the things. This is pretty useful layering actually. A lot of the UI you would want to use some kind of layering where something is on top of the other to create some kind of overlay. So this is pretty useful. Grid layout is widely used in NativeScript because of how simple the end result looks like. See, this end result looks very neat. It just has what has to be there and specifies the rows and column. If you had done the same thing in a stack layout, then the things would be pretty crazy. You would have to nest multiple stack layouts. Same with the Flexbox layout. I think that's about it for all the layouts. We'll talk about repeater another day. I think